So you talk about maturity, you talk about sort of the gap between where men were 100 years ago and where they are today. Um, I think part of that is that we're slow to put responsibility on young men. Um, as a result of that, we see them seeking all sorts of things. Uh, at the same time, we see, male enrollment in university plummeting, female enrollment in college skyrocketing. And I feel like you now have whole generations of women standing there looking back at the men and saying, come on, guys, catch up.
Hmm.
Um, how do you counsel that generation of women?
It's very painful. It's very painful. And it's part of that feminine genius to be more relationally oriented. So relationship, friendship, those kinds of things come a lot easier to the feminine brain and to the feminine genius, to the feminine person. And in a lot of ways, I think God established this complementarity between men and women so that we learn from each other. And in many ways, the division from the garden where Adam and Eve had to hide from each other is just exponentially amplifying. And so men and women are hiding from each other in a lot of different ways, men from women and women from men. But I think on the surface, what you're pointing to is just that dimension of community is immediately being dissipated, which is more painful to the feminine genius, which is ordered towards relationality in the first place. So there's a lot more that's being lost, but I think at first glance, that's the first thing that pops up, and that's the most painful. But I think it's equally painful for men and women in different ways, and it's a part of the sickness of where our culture is right now.
So they do get married, they do take their vows, but it seems in many cases, this hiding, men hiding from women, women hiding from men, the vows don't magically take that away, and it seems to be going on a lot even within marriage. Is that your experience?
Yes, 100%.
And what is it that draws people out of that hiding?
Ugh. Hopefully, that's when the desperation and the necessity does bring people, not because they've been so wounded or so deeply, hurting each other, but just the normal course of life. I find a lot of people do at some point realize, I thought I signed up for more than this. And at some point, there's some experience that somebody can have. They go to a talk, they have a friend who brings them to a retreat, they read a book, they hear a speaker, something happens, and they're sparked open. Maybe there's something more for me here. But then we have to do a really deep dive because there's so much suspicion and doubt and lack of trust that's why they've hidden themselves from each other for so long. So it's really good to spark that desire for more because we're made for more. But then it also means we have to show up and be ready to do some work because typically that trajectory has buried very deeply whatever those wounds are, those fears of each other.